Hey everyone, Mike Wolf here. Welcome to Entrepreneurs Making a Difference, and I am extremely excited today because I have my twin brother on board today. His name is Mel Abraham. He's not really my twin brother, but we often get mistaken for some strange reason because we go to a lot of the same events. And Mel is a recovering accountant who is now doing a lot of great entrepreneurial things. I know he does a lot of giving back sort of things, which is one of the reasons why I want to have him on this show. And he also runs an event, a live and online event called Business Breakthrough Academy, which I have done myself, and I can't say enough great things about it. So, Mel, thank you very much for being here today.
Well, it's great to be with you, Mike, and get a chance to do this together. And I love what you're doing with this because I really think that entrepreneurs making a difference. That's what entrepreneurs do. That's
absolutely,
why we're
yeah.
here.
Well, I don't know about you, Mel, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in the government to make the necessary changes and make this planet a better place. And I find all the entrepreneurs I know, they're the most giving people, and they're the ones that are actually creating change. We're never happy, so we're always changing things.
You got to look. We're 60 seconds in. You gave me permission to go political.
Please do.
No, I agree with you. I said, the concept of shift and change in society and the world is going to come from the innovative minds, the creative spirits, and the energy of entrepreneurs. Because it's not going to come from the politicians. I remember hearing Brian Tracy say politics. Tick is an insect. It's a parasite, and poly means there's many of them. So when you think about it in that context, and I really believe that what created, at least in the U.S., what created our great nation is that innovative thinking. That let's buck the trend. Let's forget what the way it's always been done, which I think is the death knell for any kind of business. And let's look at a better way if we had to redesign it. And I think that's where we're at. And I think the society and the world is hungry for a new paradigm and a new way.
I totally agree, and I think the thing that's really amazing is, I mean, in this day and age with technology, I think that the regular people like you and me do have the ability to make a bigger, and not just you and me, but everybody has more say than we've ever had, because now we can connect, we can take down borders, we can connect with people all over the world. We can do things that in the past could only be done by, the politicians and the big corporations with a lot of lobbying power. And now I think with the technology the way it is, I think that is definitely shifting quite a bit.
It's not just it's the cost of the technology that is so helpful. I mean, you think about it. I mean, here we are. You're in Canada. I'm in California, and we're talking like we're sitting across the table. But yet, this very interview, we have the opportunity to put it in front of millions and millions of people, and the ability to educate, to train, to provide information, to make shifts and give resources has skyrocketed from an ability standpoint and just dropped from a cost standpoint. And so you're right. There are no longer borders associated with getting access to information, knowledge, wisdom, perspective, and the things that entrepreneurs can provide.
Absolutely, and the thing that's really exciting is all the people that haven't come online yet that will be coming online in different countries. And just to think, as Brendan Burchard and Peter Diamandis both, I remember I went to an event and Peter Diamandis was saying that there's people in the middle of Africa, in the middle of the desert, that barely have water, but they've got their smartphones. And so, what are these people going to bring? What are they going to want? I mean, it's just amazing where technology is going to take us. It's just very exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see where it goes. So anyway, I'm not here to talk about technology or politics, but what I do want to talk about is entrepreneurs making a difference, and you're definitely one of them. Tell us a little bit about Business Breakthrough Academy. I went to your live event, of course, last year. It was phenomenal. My good friend Jason, who came to it, he was there at the. He needed to hear what you had to say right at that time. You were there at the right time for him because he was in a kind of at a low point in his life, and some of the stuff that he learned totally changed his life, and he will freely admit that. And I know he's probably giving you some testimonials. So tell people in your words what Business Breakthrough Academy stands for and why you created it.
um, initially, truth be told, initially I set out to say, hey, how do I take everything that I've learned being an entrepreneur for decades? I mean, some of the audience may not know I'm a CPA by education, but an entrepreneur by exhilaration. It's something that I've been doing for decades now, where I've built businesses, bought businesses, sold businesses, helped guide businesses from small mom pop to multi-million-dollar, $100 million, billion-dollar corporations. So I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly. I've seen things from the inside out, and what I realized was that business in general and entrepreneurship in general is created for a reason, and that's to serve society, to build community, and to live your dreams. And that so many entrepreneurs that I worked with, that I've mentored in my high level mentoring and all that, came to me in the context of saying, well, I got to work on my business, but they were miserable in life. They didn't have a life, or they didn't have the life that they wanted, or they created something that got way out of control, and then they were wrestling with a monster that they couldn't deal with, and the passion they had just got quashed, and it became a pain and all that. And I said, there is a way to create business, to create something that allows your life, your business, and what I call your legacy to coexist at the same time. Instead of looking at it and saying, I'm an entrepreneur, so there'll be life after business, and then my legacy will be after life. I mean, it's the craziest concept. Let me segment my life into these little buckets and have the split personality going from, okay, now I'm in my work life, now I'm in my life, and now I'm in my legacy life. Wait a second. We're on a journey together. You and I and everyone else, and that journey is an entrepreneurial journey, and it's through that journey that we create legacy in a moment. It's not a destination, it's not a point in time, it's a pathway, it's the journey. And so the concept of Business Breakthrough Academy said, let's take the decades of experience, the decades of what I have done to look at things, and I'm an analyst by heart, by trade and everything. I understand how to, really, how do you manage the downside? Limit the downside. How do you escalate the upside? I mean, that's mechanics and model and stuff that's teachable, trainable, and that was the foundation of Business Breakthrough Academy at first, until someone came to me and said, yeah, Mel, I get it. You're helping me build my business, but I really want to understand how you got your life. And I said, okay. So the concept is to realize that above the line, above the mechanics, is this concept called meaning. And in that, when we define the meaning of our business, the purpose of our business, which is really our lifestyle and our legacy, and all the decisions below the line are created in the shadow of that meaning, now we're creating a business from the heart out. And that's the key, because that's where fulfillment comes in. That's where change comes in. That's where movements come in. That's where all kinds of shifts come in to really, really escalate, one, your success, but your feeling of success and the impact that you're having. And so Business Breakthrough Academy was designed with that concept in mind, to say, let's talk about the framework that I've used for decades that have allowed me to do the things, over these years, to build businesses with meaning in mind, knowing that what I'm doing is creating legacy today.
Very cool. That's an amazing message, and so true, because we meet so many entrepreneurs that got they went from the corporate world into the entrepreneurial world, thinking they were buying themselves freedom, and quite often I've known a lot of them, and I'm sure you have too, where they almost miss the corporate world because they, as you mentioned, they create that monster that they can't control anymore, and they just created a really bad job for themselves. That's what they ended up with.
Without a doubt, and a lot of times it's really understanding, the things that we need to say no to, and in a sense, it's making decisions in advance by setting the parameters, the boundaries, you went through the program. So in my world, it's about answering the 9 questions of legacy, the 9 ideals of legacy, having those definitively in your mind and with clarity in a place where in effect a lot of your choices and decisions about things are already made, and that takes a lot of stress and strain and struggle off of the entrepreneur, and it sets you in a trajectory and a pathway towards the vision that you designed for your future, not someone else, not society, not the government, not anyone else other than yourself.
Right, right. Well, the thing that I really particularly liked about your course is that it talks. It's really about lifestyle, happiness. It's not your typical business course where it's just increase your revenues, decrease your expenses. It was actually about life and building something that you're going to love and that you're fulfilled by. And I think that's so important. And that's talk more about that balance, I guess, because that's really an important thing. And a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, sometimes I know I'm way too far on one side of the balance, and it's very hard to sometimes balance things like health and relationships and all those other things. So quite often we get really focused on just the day-to-day operations of our business. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, interestingly enough, I think that one, my perspective is this concept of work-life balance is a myth. It doesn't exist, because once we start compartmentalizing, then we start to separate ourselves into little different people that are running around doing the things in that life that we should be doing. And I believe that there isn't work-life balance. There's simply life, and we need to live it. And that if that's truly the case, the business decisions I make are life decisions. And if I think about every choice that I make in business as a life decision, you start to question how many of those decisions I would have made differently, because I realize it's impacting my life. And so I don't pretend to stand back and say I have the answer to all of it, and that my way of living is the only way, because there's a lot of people out there, kind of like you, because you know how much I travel. I travel a lot, and so there's a lot of people out there who say, I would never ever choose to do that. And that's the key point, is that when you talk about balance, it's the balance in your mind. There's going to be plenty of people that are going to look at you and say, dude, you are way out of balance doing what you're doing.
Oh, I get that all the time, but that's another story.
Yeah. And there's plenty of people that look at me the same way. The question that I would have is, are you living life the way you designed it? Did you turn around and consciously and intentionally say, this is what I want, this is what I need? And I know you, so I mean, I know what the answer is, because I know how dedicated you are to not only the passion you have for entrepreneurs and your businesses, but the dedication you have to your daughter and all that, and the choices that you're making to be able to facilitate that. Much like my relationship with my wife and my son is based on a life that we wanted to create. And not to say that, oh, well, you need to have a weighting of 80-20 or 60-40, and that's what it should be. The question is, what should it be for you? What's healthy for you? And we look at things, and we need to be brutally honest with ourselves. And I know that I've done this in the past when I've been in bad relationships, for instance, where I used work or my career as the escape or as the excuse. It could have been easy. Remember going back in 1997, my partners kind of tossed me out. I had no clients. I had no cash flow. I just purchased a house, so I was in debt, and I just became a single full-time dad of a 6-year-old boy. And I was really working hard because I had a choice to make of, do I go out into the world and keep trying to live my dream and build this business, or do I go get a job? Do I follow the traditional paradigm because I now have this responsibility of one of the world's greatest gifts, my son, and do I take that easy path? And can they coexist? And I thought I had it really going right. I thought I had it dialed in until Jeremy came into me one day from school as a child and said he drew a picture of me. And when I looked at this picture, it was a blue felt tip pen of me standing in front of my desk with 2 computer screens and a phone in each ear and another one ringing.
Oh boy.
And, I mean, it hits you right in the heart to have a child. I mean, they're brutally honest. So this is the vision. His vision of his dad at that time wasn't us in the backyard throwing the ball or going to Disneyland or doing fun things. His vision of his dad was standing in front of computer screens and being on the phone. And so I struggled at that point and said, what's the way? How do I do this? Because I knew that I could easily say, yeah, but son, I'm working hard so you can have more. And in effect, use the job, the career, the business as an excuse to not serve him at the highest level that he deserved. And instead of doing that, because of that picture, I had to really think it through and say, how do I restructure? Can it coexist? And it can. You know, as you know, he's just turned 24 years old. He's graduating college in a few weeks, and he's started his own business at 16 years old, and that's flourishing, and he's going. And we are, you know, we've been together now, like I said, since he's 6 years old, and we are the closest of friends. And it's a vastly different environment, but I had to consciously, intentionally make a choice. I had to look at society and say, I get what society says is normal, but it's not normal for me. And there has to be another way, and this is what I'm going to search for.
Well, exactly. No, that's very well said, and I think that's a great example, and very true. I like that concept that, you know, instead of pigeonholing, you know, this is my this is my work life, this is my play life, this is, you know, having it all compartmentalized. That's a big word for me. Instead of having that, it's more, you know, everything you do is your life, and, you know, doing things that are congruent with where you want your life to be is the best way to look at it. I think that's a fantastic way to look at things. So let me ask you this, Mel. So you're a recovering accountant. What happened that made you go from being an accountant to going down the entrepreneurial path? Was there one particular event or something that inspired you, or what caused that shift?
I got the entrepreneurial bug a long time ago. At 11 years old, I actually saw a movie with Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis about what I think is one of the most ingenious, best showmen and magicians ever lived, and that was Harry Houdini. And I studied Houdini, and I studied all of that, and then I decided at 11 years old that I thought I would try and go out and do magic and see if I could make money at it. And so I started on this entrepreneurial journey at 11 years old, but through that journey you have life experiences and you have life mentors, and I had a really good mentor that came into my life while I was in college that was also an accountant, but he was an entrepreneurial accountant, and I started to work for him, and he always said, do it for yourself, get the experience, go do it for yourself, and not focus on just what the accountants do. And so I went to work for one of the big firms, and at that point I had the aspiration of I can go to the big firm and I'll walk that line and I'll become a partner one day, and I'll have my name on the door and I'll be a partner. And until one night, working late at night, which happened often there. It was 10 o'clock at night in downtown Los Angeles, looking out at the skyline, which is actually a really beautiful skyline at night, all lit up. And then as I turned away from the glass, I looked into the partner's office, who was also working late, and I'm looking at him, and I said, here he is. He's stressed out. He's obese and overweight. He's got diabetes and high blood pressure. And for a moment, in that moment, I said, wow, there's my future. I can continue down this path, continue down this road, working 10 to 14-hour days, driving an hour and a half each way to the office, putting on a suit, which I don't necessarily like wearing, and walk the path that they tell accountants they should walk, and just take the journey that everyone else has taken without asking a question, without looking at an off-ramp that I might be able to get off on and do something different. And I walked in that day, that moment, and sat with the partner, and I said, I got to talk to you. And he said, what about? I said, I'm quitting. And he said, well, what do you mean? Why all of a sudden? And when? And I said, I realized that I'm living someone else's life, and I can't do that. I also realize that doing what I'm doing here, I'm not having the impact, I'm not making the difference, I'm not doing the things that I think really are necessary, and I want to have a bigger impact. And so he said, well, when's your last day? I said, tonight. I won't be in the morning. And I
Wow.
left. I walked out that day and said, there's got to be something better. If I didn't get off that merry-go-round, I just saw myself spiraling into that same space that everyone else was going into. That just like lemmings to or moss to a flame, and I didn't want to go down that path. And I was I was reading a study that was done by a lady who actually did a lot of work with those in hospice care and doing interviews with them. And one of the top 5 regrets of people when they were dying was not having the courage to live their life and ending up living someone else's life. I mean, that's a sad, sad place to be at the waning years at the end of your life, where you know that you've got maybe days, maybe weeks left, realizing, damn it, I lived someone else's life, and I didn't have the courage to go live mine. And through the entrepreneurial journey and through what I see as business, we have the opportunity to live our life, to make an indelible impact on if and especially you and I, if all you do is make an indelible impact, positive impact on that beautiful girl, that your daughter or my son, then we did okay here. To give them the tools to say, I'm going to live my life, I'm going to spread my wings, I'm going to do it my way, I'm going to be good, I'm going to be moral, I'm going to be legal, but I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to enjoy it the whole way. I don't know that there's a greater gift.
No, I totally agree with that. And, it's kind of funny because my daughter is just graduating from high school right now and figuring out what she wants to do for next year. And when I was in that age, my parents had plans for me. They wanted me to be a lawyer or an accountant, and I almost did the lawyer thing. I actually got a degree at the University of Calgary, and I was going down that path, and luckily halfway along the way I decided I was going to be an entrepreneur. That's a whole long story. But now with my daughter, I'm in the same position, but I'm doing kind of the opposite. And a few years ago, I would have probably done the same thing as my parents said. You absolutely have to go to university. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and I'd be telling her what she needs to do, and instead I'm basically, I'm sitting down with her and figuring out what lights her up, what makes her excited, and giving her the knowledge that I have on things like marketing and entrepreneurship and branding, and I'm going to help her build what she wants to build. And if she wants to go to university, that's great, and if she wants to do something different, that's great too. Whatever it is that makes sense for her, I'm going to try and help her as best I can to monetize it and help her to help other people with what she wants to do. But I know my mindset has shifted a whole ton in the last few years, so it's kind of funny that you brought that up about living somebody else's life, and I think that is so important. I certainly wouldn't want to wake up or end up in a hospital bed, and that's when you finally figure out that you did that. So very, very good words of wisdom, Mel.
Thank you.
It
really is. And to get that message across to especially our youth and even people our age, it's never too late. It's never too late. It may be a challenge. There may be obstacles. You may have put yourself in the golden handcuffs because you've got used to a certain lifestyle, but it's never too late.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. So what would be some words of wisdom if somebody is right now watching this episode and they're sitting in their cubicle at a job they're not really too thrilled about, and maybe they have aspirations, because not everybody is necessarily cut out to be an entrepreneur. It's not for everybody, but for somebody who maybe is, but they're afraid to take that plunge, what would your advice be to them? What would be their first step?
I think, I had this question asked to me, Mel, at what point did you feel the freedom to be that you knew you were financially free? And I said, it's an interesting question. I said there was actually 2 points. The one point we just talked about, of me standing on the 28th floor at 10 o'clock at night. And that was a decision point where I realized I had, and this is more important than the financially free part, is that I had the freedom to choose. And so I think one of the first things is to take on the understanding that you have the freedom to choose. You have the freedom to decide which way you want to go and what you want to do. And then I would, if the person came to me, I would ask them, I'd actually walk them through what I call the 4Ds of a legacy entrepreneur. And it's really about dedication, devotion, discipline, and drive. You know, what is it that they're dedicated to? You know, what truly do they want to dedicate their life to? And it may change and shift. I know mine has. You know, my life today is dedicated to shining the light on possibility in other people's lives again. To take their dreams out of the darkness and say, let's shake them off, let's dust them off, let's shine the light on them, and let's give you a pathway to make them a reality. So I'd ask them, you know, what is it that you're dedicated to accomplishing now, today, to dedicated to in this month, this year, in this lifetime? And then second would have to be is, what are you devoted to? What's that emotionally compelling element that you're devoted to? I know for you it's your little girl. I know I keep calling her a little girl. She's graduating high school. You know, I look at my son, and it's my boy. Yeah, I know. She will always be.
Exactly. That's right.
You know, it's my son and it's my wife, and it's the creation of the experiences in their life that are meaningful, that are substantive, and that's what I'm devoted to, and every choice that I'm making is built on that. And then the question would come up of, all right, so we know what you're dedicated to, we know what you're devoted to. How much discipline are you prepared to bring to that? And I know some people will say, well, I'm not a very disciplined person. And I remember when I was training in Japan, and I sat with my sensei, it's a little Japanese fellow who's he comes directly from a lineage of a samurai bloodline, so he comes from that very stoic space. And I sat with him after training, and I asked him the question, and I said, hey, I'm having problems, I'm not getting this technique. And he says, oh, patience. And I looked at him and I said, Sensei, I said, but what if you don't have patience? And he looks at me with this Zen kind of look and says, oh, pretend you already do. You know, I go, well, that's great. How's that supposed to help me? But, you know, it's the same thing with discipline, is that we got to start somewhere. And if all it is to say, all right, you know, let's take health. I'm going to get up every morning at 6 a.m. and I'm going to walk around the block. And that's all you do. But you start with the baby steps, because those baby steps, one, you're doing something for your life, but two, you're building the discipline model. Now, the discipline in me got built through the martial arts. It's, I mean, over 4 decades of training, and there was a lot of discipline that came through that. But we can build that, and when you look at someone, you know, one of the challenges is that we'll look at someone and say, gosh, they're gifted. And it's really easy for someone to look at your life or look at my life and say, look at where they're at. God, they're so lucky and they're gifted. But they don't look behind us, and they don't look at the journey and the wake behind us. They don't see the skinned knees and the stuck toes and the broken nose and all of that. And they don't see that the true gift wasn't necessarily talent and skill. It was discipline. It was the ability to say, I'm going to do something systematically, methodically, and persistently until I elevate myself and I accomplish and achieve and do that. So many leave discipline down by the wayside. So then the last piece, which I think drives all of it, and it happens to be drive, and is what drives you? What drives you to truly not rest on laurels, to truly grow as a person, to truly look at things and say, how can I do better? How can I do more? I could easily, and just the same as you, live in my world and never have this conversation, or never have, you know, hundreds of people in an audience that I'm speaking to, and just live my world, be happy, be, you know, well off and comfortable living and traveling. But I don't think that that's what we're here to do. I believe that we have a responsibility to give. I think that when we learn how to be successful, then the next step is to teach it to someone else. to give the gift of that pathway of success to someone else. So what is your drive that is driving you? You know, what kind of drive do you have? What level is it for you to grow and to do more, to be more, and to allow people to grow in that space? And so I would start with the 4 Ds before I ever got into, all right, the mechanics of what's the product or the service you want to do, and is the idea a good idea? How do we design the business model? I mean, all that stuff is great, but if we don't get the first part of it answered, when we make decisions on that other stuff, the mechanics of it, those decisions may be inconsistent and lack the congruence that they should with what's motivating us.
Yeah, so true. That's some great advice, and you know, I totally have to agree with that. And you know, I think when you don't do all that preliminary stuff and you just jump in without doing your homework first, you end up with those, you know, where you've just created a job for yourself that you hate. And we both know so many people that have done that to themselves. And you know, I've been blessed to have owned lots of different companies. My favorite thing is to take companies that didn't work for somebody else and take them and make them successful. When I'm not doing real estate's my main thing, but that's my secondary thing. And quite often, you know, I'm buying something that was somebody else's passion at one time, where it became their headache. And the thing that they once dreamed about doing is now something that's their nightmare. And so it's so important to do your due diligence before you jump in and find out the different things. And like you said, you know, all these things like discipline can be learned by taking small steps. And you know, the small steps lead to bigger steps. So it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, I think the hardest thing is just getting started. So many times, you know, we don't start because we get this big plate of stuff, and we don't start in because we're trying to eat the whole thing in one bite. And I was talking with someone that I was mentoring, and he was talking about feeling a little overwhelmed because he's not used to some of the online stuff, and he's not used to this. And I said, all right, let's look at this. What's the one thing we need to do now? Because the rest of it doesn't matter. It's like in a self-defense situation. I tell them, I said, I have someone in front of me that's attacking me. Nothing around me should matter, because everything else, unless I get out of this alive, is inconsequential. It's not going to exist in a moment. So I need to be on the one thing that matters right now. And for every person, it may be different. And maybe I need to take a course. I need to write a letter. I need to do the product design or the prototype. It may be I need to do a plan. I need to do a budget. Maybe I need to sell some of my stuff. But there's one thing that's the Jenga block that makes everything else fall into place, and that's what they need to focus on first. And most of the time, they know what it is because it's the thing they've been avoiding the most. And that's what they need to do first, and not try to get their arms around everything. That journey, that, you know, it's a cliche saying, but the ancient Asian saying of a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. It's true though. It's true, and sometimes most people, I'm sure you know, they fail because they never even took the first step.
Right, exactly, and that's part of the problem with entrepreneurs in general is, you know, they want things to be perfect, and you know, it never will be perfect. It's whatever you're going to put out there is always going to evolve into something better. So, but you got to take that first step, get something out there, and let it start its natural progression. Get something out there, let people critique it, and just make it better as it goes, and just take that first step. It's so important.
Absolutely.
So anyway, this is supposed to be a half-hour show, but I could talk to you all day.
We could do it for a long, long time.
I know I could talk all day, but there's still a few more things I want to ask you before we wrap up. And
you got it.
One of them, this show is called Entrepreneurs Making a Difference. So what's some of the things that light you up in terms of, you know, causes? What sort of things do you want to? What kind of legacy do you want to leave on this world? What are the things that light you up in that respect?
Working with youth is a big thing for me, as far as especially in the entrepreneur space, to allow them the opportunity to say, I can live my life. I can do things my way. I remember Jeremy someone asked Jeremy, Jeremy's my son, but asked him, after he finishes college, what's he going to do? Is he going to continue his business, or he's going to go get a job? And he says, no, I'm continuing my business. And they said, why? What made you make that decision? And he said, I looked at my friends' lifestyles, their parents' lifestyles, and then I looked at my dad's, and I want my dad's. And so, and like again, not that it's right for everyone, but for them to at least see an alternative, and give them the tools, give them the skills. I think our schools are failing miserably when it comes to financial literacy, these kinds of life skills that are necessary. I get it, and I agree. Mathematics and English and foreign language and history, all of that is important. But you know what? Right up there, we should be giving them financial literacy and the financial tools to manage themselves and take care of themselves. You know what it's like. Just in the concept, if they simply got the concept of compounding and started earlier, in the U.S. in a study going back to study. Ages 65 and over, the average savings for ages 65 and over is $56,000 a year.
Wow, that's a scary thought.
It's a scary thought. Yet if we trained them and taught them how to live, how to do things, and do it earlier, they're not running a ragged race down there when they're 50, 60 years old. They've ran the miles in a marathon, and by the time they get 40 years old, the money and everything is working for them because they did it right in the first place, or they took the risks early on in their life so they could fix it.
Oh, exactly, and it's kind of funny because the more I talk to you, the more I realize we have so much in common. But one of my big passions is to get financial literacy taught in schools, because I remember I was in grade 3, I learned how to square dance, and I can tell you I've used that 0 times in my life. And everything I know, regarding,
You shouldn't have told me that. The next time you're at one of my events, I may get you up on.
Oh, you don't want to see me do any kind of dance, but that's another story. But everything I've learned about finance and that's got me to where I am, I had to learn on my own outside of school, and it's very unfortunate. Like you mentioned, I mean, things like compounding interest is very important. You want to be on the right side of that equation. You want to be the person lending, not borrowing, and if you don't understand how that whole concept works, you're in a bad spot. And so it's just so important that we teach people when they're younger so that the next generation doesn't make the same mistakes that we've made, our generation's made.
Yeah. And then probably the second cause is really, I have my own charitable foundation that deals with abuse and violence against women and children. So. Wow,
that's huge. Tell us more about that. We're supposed to be half an hour, but I make my own rules around here, so we can do whatever we want.
I'm with you. That's why we're entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
They're not rules; they're guidelines.
Exactly. They're not even guidelines. They're just we just toss them away.
And this came about one of the business owners, the martial arts studio, and I had a young lady come into me she trained with me for years. She was a black belt. She was probably one of the best women fighters in the school. I would put her up against any man to be able to defend herself. I mean, she was phenomenal. And she was also a beautiful young girl who was a runner-up in a local beauty pageant, statewide beauty pageant. So I mean, she was beautiful. And she came in one day and said, "Can I speak to you?" and closed the door. And she broke down in tears. And I said, "What's going on?" She said, "I went to a party over the weekend, and somehow, some way, someone put something in my drink, and I woke up the next morning sexually assaulted and not remembering a thing."
Oh,
and
wow, that's horrible.
She came in with the mentality of blaming herself and how she was responsible and all that, and it was at that time that I said, I've spent years teaching these folks how to defend themselves, which is a mistake, because if I was at the party and I didn't recognize the threat and I allowed them to drug me, they could have raped me too. It doesn't matter that I had 3 decades, 4 decades of training if I don't recognize the threat. And so we created a foundation that wasn't focused on the self-defense. It was focused on the recognition of the threat. It was focused on awareness and education and enlightenment. And so we go out to colleges and schools and talk to the boys and the girls, the men and the women, and talk to some, like the boys in high school. I said, no is no. It's a complete sentence. When she says no, that is it. That's not the beginning of a negotiation. We're done. It's end of story. And for me to get in their face in a way that they understand it. So how do we teach them to be safe? How do we give them the skills of recognition without giving them the anxiety of paranoia? And so a lot of the training that comes out of that organization is based on a book that's written by a friend of mine that I actually trained his people in their defensive tactics, Gavin DeBecker. And he wrote a book called Gift of Fear. And he goes through the ways in which some of these predators will take hold of a victim. And so we use that book as the foundation of some of the teachings that come out of the foundation.
Wow, that's really a great cause. So we're going to wrap it up. Like I said, I could talk all day. I'll keep you here all day, and I know you've got to prepare for your event coming up. But if somebody wants to either contribute to that or check out Business Breakthrough Academy or just get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
There's 2 ways. If they want to check out Business Breakthrough Academy, have them go to businessbreakthroughacademy.com. That's business, BUSINESS, breakthroughacademy.com. They'll be able to get access to some free training videos there. To get more access or an idea of some of the other things that I'm doing, just go to my profile site, which is melabraham.com, and that will give them an idea of some of the things that I'm doing. It'll let them know what I'm involved with currently. It'll give them a launching point to see some of the other things and get access to me and reach out to me. And it would be a pleasure and a gift and an honor to work with some of your people.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks so much for giving us your time today. And like I said, I could keep you on here all day, and I love chatting with you, as you know. And it's always good to see you in person, but this is the next best thing. But thanks again, and it was just great having you here.
You got it, Mike. Thank you for asking. It was a lot of fun, and we'll have to do more of this.
Yeah, well, I know I'll be seeing you at your event in a couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to that, and thanks again. And we'll definitely have you on here again because I want to talk. Well, like I said, I got a whole bunch of things I want to ask you. But so thanks so much, and thanks everybody.
See you soon.
We'll see you soon, Mel. And thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed listening to Mel Abraham today. He's just a great influence and a great mentor of mine, actually. And I strongly recommend Business Breakthrough Academy. I've taken it myself, love it, and I'm taking it again this year. So hope to see you there. Thanks again, Mel.
You got it, buddy.